You're listening to episode number 17 of the Happy Choir podcast. Hola, people. I am your host, Carlos Cordero, helping you connect with others to choral music. I am the creator of this podcast, and this week I might be biased and I don't want to oversell our guest, but I also want to because my husband is great, and it's Ryan Heller. He is the guest of this week, and in case you don't know him, he is the artistic director of Chorus Austin and director of the Alamo Metro Chorus in San Antonio. Ryan has traveled the world with many ensembles as a conductor, as a singer, and he also composes. But he's here today to talk to us about bringing new music to your community. In this conversation, he talks about his experience of bringing new music to Chorus Austin, an organization that was used to just programming the classical, but how this has benefited not only his choral singers but also the community. I'm also glad that we got to talk about second and third performances of new music. So it's not all about the world premiere, but also how does that piece live through the second and third performances, and how he's a big advocate for that. I'm so thankful that you're here, and let's now hear Ryan Heller. And today in the Happy Choir podcast, we have a guest that I might be biased to have invited because, well, he lived here with me next to my office. We're in the same apartment. And we have today Ryan Heller, which is my husband. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Hello, darling. I'm wonderful. Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's going to be very funny because I'm going to try not to call you Amor, which is what I call you 800 times a day.
That's right.
So let's see how this goes.
I'm excited.
As of now, I will have already introduced the things that you do for the music and the choral world, but we would love to hear from you. How did you start in music? What were your first steps?
Well, I grew up in a musical household. My mother is a singer. My father played the trombone, and both of them loved a wide variety of music. So I have really early memories of listening to old LPs on our phonograph that was set on a big table, and I would crawl underneath it and listen to records as varied as the greatest hits of the Eagles to symphonies of Brahms and Beethoven. With the music that was going on in my family, I decided I wanted to start playing the violin. That was my very first instrument when I was about 8 years old. From there, after a couple of years, I decided I wanted to move to the winds, and so I went to clarinet and saxophone. So I got to play in wind ensemble and in the symphony orchestra there in my school. And eventually, when I made it to high school, is when I started singing. I auditioned for our concert choir and got put into it, as well as the small ensemble, which at my high school was called Rising Sound. That was the name of the chamber choir, and I was one of only 2 freshmen that made it in that year. So I needlessly got a lot of attention from the upperclassmen. At the same time, as many people know, I have a great affinity for barbershop, as my mother was also singing in several choruses in that art form. And so I joined a local men's chorus in the Portland area called the Vocal Gentry. And they were one of the great evergreen districts, as they're called, choruses back in the day. They are since, unfortunately, no longer around. But they provided me a huge wealth of opportunity in my early musical career.
I knew all of this, but it's always good to refresh my memory since it's so bad. But since you started on instruments, did you feel that changing to the voice was challenging? Was it something that you were looking for? What happened there?
Well, part of the reason I chose instruments was because most of my experience with singing was with my mother, and either with the opera chorus, the symphonic chorus, or her women's chorus. And so the experiences I had didn't exactly entice me or turn me on to wanting to be a singer. And it wasn't until a couple of performances much closer to high school where I saw a really fantastic men's choir, and then actually got taken to the King's Singers, which had a touring group of six that came to Portland. That I saw the possibility that this could be something I wanted to do. Now, along the journey, of course, whenever I'd be riding in the car or even around the house, some pop music might come on, and I might be singing along, and mom might harmonize, or mom might be singing the melody and she'd tell me to harmonize. So already we knew that I had at least some semblance of a voice and the ability to hear the tune and harmonize with it. So when I finally did start, it was a pretty natural fit.
Also, if you haven't heard Chris Peterson, who is my mother-in-law, she sings bass in barbershop, and she's a fantastic singer. I have to give a big shout out, but also because she can sing lower than me.
That's right. She can sing lower than most
It's
people who
amazing,
identify as male, and she's also a master class in resonance unto herself,
amazing.
as many of the folks listening might know.
In fact, I'm gonna use this opportunity to say that we have to have her in the show. It has to happen because first of all, you have to hear about all of her experience in singing, but also because you have to hear her voice. It's amazing.
It's a wonderful idea.
I love you, Chris. So get back to the song. Get back. It's you on this show for now, and it's amazing to see how, even though you try, these different instruments, these different ways of expressing, you end up in this choral world, and not only in choral music per se, but also barbershop. I like that you were trying different things and seeing where do you want to stay. When did conducting came to your path?
Well, I was really fortunate as a young singer to have people recognize my natural leadership tendencies. So in high school, my choir director was a wonderful woman named Norma Baker, and she, in my sophomore year, made me a section leader. And at that same time, in the men's chorus that I was singing in, they made me a co-assistant director. There had been some change up in the musical leadership of the chorus, and they recognized the skills in me. So very early, I was able to then start training those skills with the people that were my musical mentors and leaders. It wasn't until my sophomore year of college that I knew for sure conducting was going to be a path that I wanted to go down with the specific aim of making it my career. And that was largely in part due to the notion that, as I experienced several conductors by then, um, that there must be a way to make rehearsals more engaging for all of the musicians in the room, to make it more joyful and more positive, and that a conductor's job should be more than a human metronome. So my imagination was really starting to go wild with scores as I was getting more and more experience. And I was very lucky at that time. I started my undergraduate career at Pacific University. And my voice teacher and mentor is a man named Dr. Scott Toomey, who encouraged me to transfer from the school, recognizing that my needs weren't getting met. And at the time, there were only two undergraduate conducting programs in the country. One was at Northwestern, and one was at Chapman University. And I applied to both and got accepted to both. And in visiting the schools, decided that I wanted to make Chapman my home. So once I transferred to Chapman, my main mentors were John Koshak and Bill Hall, and they were the ones who very quickly set me on the path that I'm on today in terms of my musical leadership and knowing that a conductor need not have to choose between choral or orchestral music or band or opera or musical theater, but really if you're well versed and well prepared, you can do it all. So I was very fortunate to have a lot of guidance and a lot of influence from very early on in my musical career.
Okay, there are two things here that I wanted to go a little bit further. One is mentioning that it's amazing to see, or it's always so interesting for me to see, that when we start to talk about our history in music and how we develop as musicians, there's always these people who were there for us and people who guided us, who took the time to care for what we were doing. And even if we weren't doing it right, or even if we were just studying, they were there for us, right? Did you have to reach to these people? Were they just there for you? How do you feel it was this process of connecting with your mentors?
Well, as I mentioned, they recognized something in me, especially those early teachers and musical leaders. So I was really blessed to have them reach out to me and say, "Hey, we think you'd be a good section leader. We think you'd be a good assistant director," and provide me opportunities, both educational and musical. I mean, I remember being 16 years old and standing in front of my men's chorus, which at the time had 80 men in it, and having an opportunity to conduct in front of them. And, I at that moment didn't particularly know what I was doing, but was delighted to get the opportunity. In high school, the teacher I mentioned, Norma Baker, allowed me to conduct starting my junior year. And then my senior year allowed me to actually program a couple of pieces that I had heard and fallen in love with and conduct those in concerts. So she truly was a selfless educator. And my growing excitement for the art and craft of conducting was something that these teachers and mentors really nourished, and I think all of us stand on the shoulders of those people that helped us along the way. And moving forward in my educational career, I was very fortunate to have the encouragement of my mentor to actually change schools, since he recognized that I wasn't getting what I needed, and to further the growth that he knew would foster the next phase of my career. So, even in that aspect, I was always open to learning and to trying new things. And then when the opportunity arose, to actually completely altering my path from performance, vocal performance, into the focus on conducting.
That's awesome. And I love the sharing of the power that, power in quotes, but the conductors have this, they are in front of the choir and they don't have to share this with students, right? They don't have to give them time with the choir, but it's awesome that you had this opportunity to explore in front of a live choir, of a real choir. Was there any fear with that? Do you feel that it was more excitement?
There wasn't fear early on. It was all excitement and curiosity. It wasn't until my full-fledged undergraduate training, and then of course later in graduate school, when you're in front of ensembles that are actually organized and put together, and you have your teacher or mentor right there over your shoulder giving you that feedback. That's when the fear might start to come in. And any choral music aficionados might remember the legacy of Bill Hall, who was a towering man at 6 foot something, with a huge bass voice, and he expected you to know everything about every aspect of the score if you're going to stand in front of the choir and then be clear, bringing in whatever it was in your imagination to life. And I have very fond memories, fond might be another thing in quotes, of being in front of our university choir, which was a 120 voice auditioned choir at Chapman's Spectacular Ensemble. And we were rehearsing a piece by Brahms, and I was conducting, and he was standing behind me, and he, as only Bill Hall could do, went in a really low kind of foghorn-like sound, and stopped and said, "What was it that happened in measure 23 with the altos, Ryan?" In the 3 seconds that I was panicking, I didn't have an immediate answer. So moments like that stick out of my memory, and that certainly breeds a level of fear when you're in front of an ensemble. But of course, his main point was, don't ever get in front of an ensemble if you are not prepared to handle any situation and to know as much as possible about the score. So, of course, it was all a learning experience. Everything he did had a huge reason for being. And, I am ultimately thankful for it in hindsight. It was just in that moment when you start to quiver a little bit in your hands, and 120 of your friends in the room are trying to support you as best as they can.
And also telling you, tell me what do I do? Tell me what to do. Tell me.
That's right. Please help.
You know everything. And also those moments are the good moments when we have to use like a general comment. They weren't feeling the light, or they needed more support. All those kind of things, that because that's always true, right? That always will serve you, and relate to the any problem that will have happened. I don't know. Hey people, I want to take a quick second to tell you how your support makes a difference. When you support me on patreon.com, You are not only giving $3 a month, but you are giving my brand a vote of confidence. This translates to helping several other artists to connect through choral music. Think about it as a cup of coffee that you invite me once a month, only that it's way more impactful and personal. Plus, you get to be part of the behind the scenes of my career as a composer, with the many perks that I shared in there. Even if you're not able to give right now, your support listening to this podcast is great, even more if you leave a review in iTunes. Patreon.com/composercordero is the link that you want to visit or share with others. Hope to see you there. Talking more about the present, how do you feel that all of these challenges brought you to then what you bring to the ensembles that you lead today?
The road was long and winding, and part of what I tried to learn through the early part of my studies was as much about what I didn't want to do in a rehearsal as much as what I want to do in a rehearsal. And there are many famous stories about many famous conductors getting upset in rehearsals, using fear and intimidation tactics to get their ensembles to fall in line. And that was never something that resonated with me. So I knew that I wanted my rehearsal room to be a joyful place. In my graduate studies, I was very fortunate to have many mentors, one of whom, and my primary mentor, was Dr. Bruce Brown. And he always said that your singers will never sing with freedom if they don't feel that they can be themselves, which, of course, seems like a really simple truth. But anything that we do that fosters tension or inhibition in the rehearsal room, can lead to things that ultimately destroy an ensemble tone. The same is also true, I might add, of orchestras, wind ensembles, any instrumental combination. I always want my musicians to feel free to bring their ideas into the room. So all of that is wrapped in the psychological component of what it means to be a musical leader, let alone all of the techniques and pedagogy that we learn to foster the best production of sound, whatever the nebulous term musicality might mean to different people. So all of those past experiences set me up to acknowledge the fact that though I am one singular leader, however many people there might be in the room, collectively always know more than I do. And I want their experience to come into our music making, and for me to truly be the conductor, the conduit, the prism, as it were, through which energy is focused, to be a decider of musical elements, but to not be an autocratic, firm, controlling hand, unless it absolutely is required. And some days that does happen. But otherwise, it really is a co-creation of art that I feel is the best spirit of what it means to bring music to life.
What I love about this response is that, well, being married to you and, we've had this 3 years now, 3 years and a half together, sitting in your rehearsals, seeing you plan these rehearsals and how you program music, how you create the experience for the audience, and then putting it together with the choir. It rings so much true for me because I can see it in the singers. I can hear it when they're not only singing, but also speaking about their experience of rehearsal, of concerts, of being part of one of your rooms, one of your classes, concerts, etc. But, well, you know that I admire you a lot because I'm still learning all of the things that you do for us in the choral world. But I just wanted to say thank you for this philosophy that you bring to the ensembles.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I think buried in what you just said was a really great truth that I always try to keep in mind, especially when I'm programming, but also through the rehearsal process, which is ultimately it's about the audience. It's about the community with whom we are sharing our music. And if our musicians don't feel that they are in on that, but just some kind of servant of the musical leader, then that musical journey that we want to bring to life for our audience is never going to be as profound or as energized. So if we can enroll everybody in that vision and remind them that it's always about the audience, then that also serves to make perhaps the tedious moments of rehearsal a little less tedious. If we're doing something like vowel isolation or count singing, which all of us hate doing. But
I
if we
love
can
it.
remember that it's going to bring rhythmic clarity and vitality to our performance and help them remember the why of why it's happening in rehearsal, and that it's ultimately going to bring a clearer message of communication to our audience, then it's again much more easy to capture, especially the adult avocational performer in what it is that we're doing.
That's wonderful. And I said I loved count singing, but we all know I think that
That's a lie.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, I've never. I know English until I have to count sing. In fact, I know that I know numbers until I have to count sing. How do I know that
Do you
two?
count sing in Spanish, I wonder?
We don't. I'm not sure. And if we did, I didn't. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm telling you, I know that three comes after two, right? Well, when count singing, no.
Well, we make it T, so that screws up your brain.
Anything can come after any number when you're count singing. It's amazing. It's amazing. That's when my true creativity comes along. So, yay. Maybe that's a crawl piece that I have to do, count singing. Although I'm sure that it might have been done.
It's not a bad idea, though. Mix up all the numbers and see what happens.
Oh, I like this. So, for the focus topic of today, I've seen that, well, I've already said here in the Happy Choir podcast that we met through Chorus Austin and the competition of Young Composer Singer. Young Composer Singer, what? We met through the Young Composer competition in Southwest Voices. Getting to know Chorus Austin, I've realized that it's a very interesting combination of your programming because you can see something from Bach and then you can see a piece that was made yesterday, something that was already premiered, but then you do these second and third performances, or a piece that's still in development. I mean, Corsosing seems to be an organization that's open to all of these ideas from the future, from the past, from the present. And I thought that you were the perfect person to talk about this and how to bring it to the community choir.
So, first, I think it's important to note that the broad range of programming you describe hasn't always been the case with Chorus Austin. And the history of Chorus Austin is quite varied. It began in 1955 as the Austin Civic Chorus, a choir founded by the city of Austin for community members to gather and perform the great choral masterpieces. So that was the earliest days. In the mid 80s, an organization called the Austin Handel and Haydn Society was born. That ultimately morphed into the Austin Vocal Arts Ensemble. And concurrent with that, still, the Austin Civic Chorus was going on. Later, in the 90s, the umbrella of Chorus Austin was created to manage those two ensembles, but neither yet was really anything in terms of an entity to do with Chorus Austin. So when I came along, which was back in 2009, we ultimately said we want Chorus Austin to be the one brand, the one marketing image. Everything can center through Chorus Austin, and one arm will be the symphonic chorus, and one arm will be the chamber ensemble. And so whatever our offerings might be, we'll obviously have one of those two choirs, or both, sometimes coming together. But with that fresh approach also allowed me to say, and now it's time to expand our programming. So with the Austin Civic Chorus being so heavily focused on the choral masterpieces, and the Austin Vocal Arts Ensemble really having a large influence of Renaissance, motets, masses, madrigals, that kind of a cappella music, really up to like the 19th century part songs of Brahms, Elgar, maybe some 20th century music, but never a strong underpinning of contemporary music. I said, this is something that's of huge significance and importance to me, and I wanted to make it one of our tenets of programming. And I was very blessed to have a board at that time that enrolled in my vision and said, as our musical leader, we trust you. So feel free to start programming in ways that you think reflects that. And of course, in a city like Austin, where we have so many rich musical offerings happening, with a wide range of styles, with like indie and pop and folk and country and rock. All of those things also make up the diverse collection of singers that we have in our choir, as well as our audience. Yes, we still maintain a really strong presence with those stalwarts of the repertoire, as you were mentioning, Bach, Brahms, Beethoven, etc. But now we also include many new pieces of music throughout the season, including one concert that's devoted entirely to contemporary music. That is, of course, our Southwest Voices series that you mentioned, which also houses the Young Composers Contest. So, to go more to the core of your question about programming so broadly and with such a specific aim on new and contemporary music for a community choir, part of the stigma that you have to battle is that it's too difficult, that the audience won't like it, that the singers won't like it, and that it's just not anything tangible or relatable or important. Once you start introducing the music that you, and by you in this case I mean me, the artistic director, love and are passionate about, and get that introduced to your ensemble, that excitement, of course, quickly spreads. And in most cases, there might not be any kind of commercial recording for them to listen to really get the buy-in of the piece. So as you go through the rehearsal process, once the learning starts to turn into performing, and you're doing elements of musicality to bring phrase shapes and dynamic nuance and text clarity, or whatever the elements might be, to life for the audience, you can see the light in their eyes start to shine a little bit brighter, and that's when you say, oh, they're starting to get excited about this piece, and then they get to share it with the audience. And very often, what began as a singer's perhaps lesser loved piece or feared piece, very quickly becomes one of their most favorite moments on the concert series. As part of our 50th anniversary celebration, I was delighted that Chorus Austin chose to engage Austin's own Donald Grantham in commissioning a new major oratorio, which was called The Contemplations of Hafiz. And he scored it for full chorus, orchestra, soloists, and it ended up being about 50 minutes in duration. 50. So this was a lot of new music for our symphonic chorus to learn. Traditionally, the chamber ensemble carries the load of more new music through our seasons, but this was a huge undertaking for the symphonic singers, and we paired it with little morsels of our greatest hits, as it were, of the 50 years prior. Things from the Bach B minor Mass, from Elijah, kind of a greatest hits, as it were. But the majority of the singers would tell you at the end of that concert that what was most rewarding was bringing that new oratorio to life, and watching the crowd leap to their feet after the final release of the final movement, which has as much to do with what Donald wrote for us as it does the performance of the musicians on stage. So I always heartily remind my choral colleagues to not fear new music, that not everything is avant-garde or non-traditional harmony. These days we are blessed to live in an abundantly rich choral world where you can find virtually any style of new music from any composer. And I don't just say that because I'm married to one. But we can actually suit our choir, our audience, our community, if we have a pulse of what their musical tastes are. We can easily find contemporary music that aligns with what our ensembles are doing, and to share that with our audiences.
But if you're looking for new music, I write a lot of that, and in different ways. So
Shameless plug. I
Exactly.
can be the one who says that. Carlos is a very versatile composer, writing for many combinations of voices and instrumentation if you are so inclined. So be sure to check out his website and all of the pieces that he has available.
It's amazing what you were just mentioning, because then you transform the experience of the fear and the doubts of a new piece into the journey of learning it and discovering it, and then sharing it with the audience. So it's not longer, it doesn't feel like a process, a mechanic process. It feels like a human experience. As you said, you can see in the faces of the singers when they start to commit to the piece and to start to, oh, I'm feeling these ideas come alive, and it's different. It's an experience that has no other comparison, right?
That's absolutely right. And I'm reminded of the tagline of the composer's date book, which always said, remember that all music was once new music. That piece by Bach that you love so much was once new, and the audience heard it for the first time, and the singers and orchestra brought it to life for the first time, and may have had an initial reaction like some of us have to a new piece of music, which is, whoa, that's really difficult, and this is going to be quite a challenge to undertake to bring to life. But I think continually reminding ourselves as musicians of that fact also re-engages us with new music. I am also just an ardent believer that as a musical leader, it's my job to be in touch with the new music that's being written in my own time. And as a conductor, if I'm not allowing access to my ensembles for these composers, then I'm really doing a disservice to both. Because ensembles need to be aware of this music, and composers need to have access to ensembles. Right? It's only so much as their imagination can allow, which might be a very deep process, but it's not actually music until it's breathed into being with our choirs. So I do say, regardless of what your ensemble might be it a church choir, any level of a school choir, community choir, professional choir, etc., that you can engage with new music, you can engage with living composers, and that the process can really be one of vitality, of huge educational benefits, and of energizing your ensemble, especially if they're able to get some kind of interaction with the composer. Of course, that's a whole nother layer of the experience with new music. So the benefits are many, and the impact that will have not only on your organization, but your community really can't be overstated.
And when I think about other art too, let's say painting, books, or even cooking, you are presented with something new, and you either enjoy it or not, but you always give it another chance, right? If you see a painting, you don't just pass by it and say no, but you have to look at it again, right? Or you have to have a time with it. It's not a thing of 5 seconds as we are so used today, right?
Well, absolutely, and I think you just brought forth two more really important points. The first is with whenever we engage with a piece of art in whatever medium, our first impression might change upon a second viewing or a second hearing or a different take on it. Right, seeing, as you were using the example of visual art, a piece from 50 feet versus 10 feet can even change your interaction and thought of it. So. Um, when we first hear a piece and we think, oh, that might not be to my liking, it might be at a second hearing that you say, oh, but now I'm noticing that alto melody. And that's really haunting that you didn't notice the first time because you were caught up in the generic sound. I think that really bears a deep probing in terms of how we engage our minds with new music. And the other piece in terms of understanding art, if we can even dare as humans to try to touch the subject, is that artists themselves go through changes. Choreographers, painters, composers as well, might have different styles that they're exploring, might be going through different periods of their own creation. So we are in such a moment in time that we're quick to put things in a tiny box with as much labeling as possible. And so we think, oh, that composer belongs to that school and this is what they do, and I don't like it. But you might not know what changes that composer might have undergone in a year or 5 or 10. To constantly be asking ourselves the question of what else might be happening. How has art evolved? Going from some kind of 20th century examination where we think about impressionism, and then we think about 12 tone, and we think about the breakdown of tonality to lead into the avant-garde and pointillistic tendencies, only to come back to neo-romanticism and neoclassicism, and then of course all of the experimental things going on in the 60s and 70s, leads us to this moment in time where composers have such a wealth of experiences and tools, yes, at their disposal, that again, for anyone just to say, oh, I don't like new music, that's just too broad a statement, right? That's like saying, I don't like chicken. And maybe if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, that's a whole other topic. But the innumerable ways that it can be prepared is of course my point. So the more open mind we can keep, I think the more successful we are at engaging with contemporary art.
And what if your challenge as a conductor is to find a way to appreciate that piece, even though if it's not something you like? What if that's the challenge, to maybe find something there that you can express with or express through? We have things that we like, and we have things that we don't like. But sometimes we are so close to things that we don't like. For example, I don't enjoy much of the classics. I'm not a person that sits and listen a lot to Brahms and to Beethoven, but I also know that when I do, I had this class in UH about Haydn. I discovered something that I liked in his symphonies, even though that was something that I didn't listen to a lot or even regularly. So, what if what you're saying about these pieces that we don't like at first and that we decide we don't like, what if it's like a challenge? Or it's something that you have to find in that piece that you can appreciate more?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's certainly a way to approach it. I would also just offer as an aside that, of course, our tastes change as we grow and evolve and have different life experiences. Um, in my early 20s, I was not a huge lover of early music, and that included music of the Renaissance, even up through early Baroque music. I just found it so pedantic. But as I read more and I studied more scores, I quickly discovered that that was just way too limiting in terms of thought, because there were so many boundaries being pushed. There was so much exploration happening in terms of form, harmony, counterpoint, etc. So, as you're saying, if you can find a lens through which to view something that maybe is not resonating with you, to craft a level of appreciation, there probably is always something there. As an artistic director, however, most of the time with my programming, if I don't love it, I'm not going to program it. There might be, a time where I'm asked to prepare a piece in a collaboration with somebody. That might not be something I would program, and of course, it's my job to get it prepared for a performance. But 99% of the time, if it's on Chorus Austin's concert series, it's because I have selected it with a specific aim to take an audience on some part of our journey, or the whole journey if it's a major work, that I want to share with them.
And something too that I enjoy much about your philosophy of in choral music and in music in general is that you don't think only in your programming and in your the way that you express yourself. You don't think only on the audience as the audience of a concert, but also the audience will be the singers in this case. What you're bringing to your singers, what's the specific thing that you want them to learn or to go through or to express themselves? There are so many. We can be so close of thinking our audiences are the people that come to our concert and the people that buy our tickets, when there is so many people that are affected by this music and changed.
That's right. We have to remember that our musicians are the first people who engage with the music that we create, that we program. So if we haven't designed a concert program and even a whole season without considering them, we're also doing them a disservice. If they're being asked to sing in a particular tessitura for, let's say, an hour straight, odds are it's going to be a little bit fatiguing, not only vocally, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And as soon as we allow that voice in the head to start to go, ugh, when is this going to be done? That will seep into the music and ultimately make its way to the audience. So I encourage us as leaders to be looking at the journey for our musicians as well.
I just want to quickly remind you that all of the links that are mentioned in this episode will be in the show notes in thehappychoir.com/podcast, or find it in the description of this episode. Also, once you are there in the website, you can subscribe to the newsletter. This will come with a $20 discount for your next choral recording, a free guide that I've created just for you on the things that I've discovered in my career on how to be a happy composer, conductor, or singer. You will also receive a weekly email with podcast episodes, blog posts, and music. I hope to see you there. Now, let's get back to this episode. As I mentioned previously in this episode, you were the co-founder of Portland Vocal Consort, so you're not stranger to programming new music. Do you feel that having this experience before this give you the courage to bring this to Chorus Austin?
That's a great question. Portland Vocal Consort was a wonderful professional choir, and one of the main pillars of our bringing the organization to life was wanting to share new music with the audiences and the community in Portland. And yes, we were very lucky to have had a successful run of nearly a decade. So when I came to Austin, definitely the successes that we enjoyed were a piece of my inspiration, as well as knowing that a concert series specifically designed towards being focused on new music could be a successful addition to the season. So after my first season with Chorus Austin, and I started to get the ideas that I wanted to do more new music, I said to the board, this is an important thing for me as an artist. I want to start programming these works, both with the smaller choir as well as the symphonic chorus. And they very graciously agreed for me to start programming those pieces. So yes, the success I was able to encounter with Portland Vocal Consort was an important component of bringing more new music to Austin.
And I ask this because, at least when I think about this situation, I feel it's daunting and a very brave move to then ask for this. So, was it a slow process or was something that you could do right away? You're telling me that it was 1 year after you brought up the idea, but from that moment on, when you mentioned this, do you feel it was a slow process or?
I was very fortunate to have, like I said, a supportive board and core leadership around me. What we did first was just introduce random single octavos into a concert series. So the chamber choir might sing one or two contemporary pieces. Our large choir might do something new on our holiday concert. And that happened for about 3 years. And somewhere around my 4th year is then when I took my official idea to bring the contemporary music concert series, Southwest Voices, to the board and said, okay, we've had great success with these pieces in engaging with composers, good audience response. I think it's time for us to investigate doing a whole concert series of just new music. And let's also have the Young Composer Contest be a piece of this so we could also deepen our educational directive. So all of those things I think were allowed to be fostered because of the success of the previous years and the response that we got from our community, both our community of singers and our community of the Austin audience, we also, as I mentioned before, live in a town that's so rich with so much new music, and our colleagues at, for example, the Austin Symphony, also are very large advocates of new music. So our audiences are no strangers to it, and for the most part are unafraid to engage with something new. So when I posed the idea of bringing Southwest Voices to life, it was met with enthusiastic, well, let's give it a try and see what happens. And after the first offering, it was an overwhelming success. And the next year, when we brought it back and we were able to do multiple concerts, is when we garnered one of our first major accolades in terms of recognition from our arts critics here. So that only helped to bolster the cause. And then we were blessed to receive the 2017 Dale Worland Singers Commission Award from Chorus America, which allowed us to partner with composer Joshua Fishbein and bring a piece called Sunset Symphony to life. So, national recognition never hurts. And with a board, also wanting to be guardians of fiscal responsibility, to say, oh, we are getting support from this organization, which includes funding support. They can also take it to our global audience and say, this is something unique that we are doing. It allows Chorus Austin to continue bringing it to life in a new way, and new music to life for you, our Austin community, that only you get to experience in this setting. So it was a very fortuitous set of circumstances that led to the current situation, which is great success and enthusiastic support of new music.
Thank you so much for that thorough answer, because I feel that sometimes people might be looking out there for validation of this idea of bringing new music, and how does it happen? How long does it take? If an inexperienced conductor might think, okay, let's just do it right away, then it might be too overwhelming, or it might be good for them to hear that, oh, it happened in a slow process and in 3 years, etc. But every place will have their time and their own experience, but it's good to hear from the people that have already done it. So thank you so much for that.
Most definitely. And I think it's really important for those people who are thinking about programming new music to remember that everything doesn't have to be a world premiere. There is so much great new music that has been performed just once, that is looking for a second performance, maybe a third performance. So find that music that you are passionate about and that you want to share with your ensembles and with your audiences, and start bringing that to life. And perhaps that will lead to engaging with a composer for commission. But remember that doesn't have to be the first step. And if you are engaging, for example, with a board, that's a much easier sell to say, I'm going to program this piece. It's already been written. All we have to do is buy the music, as opposed to we need to find many thousands of dollars to commission this piece from this composer. So remember that you can find virtually anything you want to fit any theme that you might have, or just a piece of music that you want to share, from a vast slate of composers today.
So now that you mentioned that part of the second and third performances, and that not everything has to be a premiere, which is kind of a myth out there, right? Oh, I'm doing new music. It has to do something that it has never existed. No, there are also second and third performances and pieces that need to be explored in different ways and more. So, would you say that Chorus Austin is known for this?
I sure hope so. As an important part of our programming, I find those pieces that are representative of contemporary music, of composers that are living today, and then find their home throughout the season wherever I might need them. As part of our Southwest Voices series, which is our new music series, that the preponderance of that music is repeat performances of the score. There might be a couple of premieres on any given concert, but I would say 90% of the music programmed for Southwest Voices are repeat performances of the piece. It's always interesting to find the music and then to engage with the composer and any questions I might have, or details to be worked out, to say, oh yeah, that was written back in 2005, and this is only going to be the third performance. of it, because again, we live in this culture where people want to have that additional feather in their cap, or the bragging right, or the program note to say world premiere. But again, there is so much wonderful music out there that this second and third performance idea is really noteworthy. And if there's anything I hope Chorus Austin can be known for, it's allowing composers that forum to say, I have this piece, and it's getting another breath of life as it's shared with the community.
What's wonderful also about it is that you're bringing this to to a new audience. So, it might not be the world premiere, but for them it is, right? For them it is a new piece.
That's right. It'll be for the singers and for the audience.
Exactly. So, now this might be a difficult question, but how many new scores do you think Chorus Austin perform per season?
That is a difficult question.
Yeah, just a rough number.
I would guess this season, it's my 11th season in the 2019-2020 year.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm going to venture a guess that by the time the season is done, we'll have done something in the neighborhood of 30 new pieces of music this year.
That's wonderful. And that's a healthy balance, because it's not that it's all new music, which is not wrong either. But at least for what you speak to your audience, this is a healthy balance. This is a healthy balance. English is hard, people. Of of new music and then the classics, as we were speaking.
That's right. And this year we might be a little tipped towards the new music side with everything we've had programmed. For example, the previous year, it might have been closer to 20. But again, as you've heard me talking about in this podcast, the more that I can program and engage with contemporary music to share with our audiences, even if it's a couple of single octavos peppered on a concert that has other pieces as well, I think that's a significant importance for me as the music leader to continue doing.
And what a great thought to finish this conversation, although we can be talking here for hours, because, we have so many little details here, so many little subjects to expand in this conversation, but I won't keep you here too long.
Well, I mean, this is our home.
You're in my office, which is in a closet, by the way. But that's not important. I digress. What I want to ask for these final minutes of the interview is this question that I ask to my guests, which is, what's one thing that you wish composers, singers, or conductors will know or do? So you can pick one, you can pick the three of them.
What a wonderful question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is for conductors, for musical leaders, to remember is that they ultimately are the one musician on stage that doesn't make a sound. So our end game is to be as effective with non-verbal communication as possible. Along those same lines, in a rehearsal situation, the less talking we can do, the better. If we can get something done with after stopping, and using minimal words, I'm a big advocate of that, so that we keep our singers singing more in rehearsal, or our players playing, whatever it is that we might be doing there. And, I of course do not mean that even though we're not making noise, we're not important. I am very much of the belief that the conductor should be a physical representation of the music. You heard me say at the very beginning, I was trained to not just be a human metronome. If that were the case, we could just put a baton in a robot's hands and program in the beats per minute, and that would get it done. And it's terrifying to know that actually that those robots exist now. But again, I digress. So if we can capture the essence and the spirit and the vitality of the score and bring that to life for our musicians on stage, then we are enabling them to more successfully engage with the music and communicate with the audience, which, as we discussed earlier, is who everything really is all about, to keep the communication flow for the audience, which means we have to be the best prism and conduit of that energy that we can be. For singers, the thing that when you ask me that question hits my mind is twofold. One is to remember that you are a member of an ensemble. It's oh so easy because we have an ego wrapped up with our instrument to think that whatever personal experiences we're having are the most important thing in the room at the moment. And if we can leave those things at the door when we come into the rehearsal hall and remind ourselves that we are indeed a member of an ensemble, something greater than ourselves, we're already going to be in a better place mentally. Along those lines, for musicians to always remember that they are in command of their own mental focus. To take a second before rehearsal starts to say, what are my intentions for tonight? What am I bringing to this rehearsal? What do I know I need to do? What can I learn? What can I do better? I know if Ryan says X about articulation, he's not talking to me because I've mastered that skill. To be more mindful about their presence and their participation, I think would elevate and enhance everyone's experience and help rehearsals continue to move along in a more efficient and ultimately more joyful manner. And the last thing I would say to everybody is to remember that all of us are artists, that everything that we do is in service to something bigger than ourselves, so that ultimately we can embrace the notion that we have the power to change lives, just like any great art does. And you never know when that's going to be necessary for someone, perhaps someone in our own rehearsal room or someone in our audience. So if we can tell ourselves that each day, then we can always live into that truth and remind ourselves that our interaction with one another can be joyful, can be uplifting, can be light-filled, and make this world the better place that it needs to be.
Maybe you didn't hear, but I was here silently clapping because all of the things that Ryan was saying that you were saying were so powerful. And what I feel is that the people that go through your concerts, through your rehearsals, and not only in the ensemble, but even if they are visiting, they learn something new, and it's not something that goes without leaving a mark. So I feel that not only through your conducting, but also through your teaching and your speaking here in this podcast, you have inspired us to do something different and more, to give ourselves more out there. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you, and thank you for letting me come on and talk.
Of course, and just to say goodbye, I know that you have concerts coming up, so can you tell us about it?
Oh, of course. The next performance that Chorus Austin is offering features the combined ensembles, our symphonic chorus and the chamber ensemble, in a concert called Songs of the Earth, which is inspired by the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, coming up this April. It's one concert only next Saturday, February 22nd, 7:30 p.m. at Northwest Hills United Methodist Church. Our symphonic choir will be offering Randall Thompson's beloved Frostiana, and giving the world premiere of a new piece by Carlos Cordera, our host right here, in a piece titled Escucha, all about noticing nature and the world that we live in. The chamber ensemble will feature 8 or 9 pieces, again, reflecting on these themes about Earth Day, our interaction with nature, things that we can do, and a wonderful reminder that although I am only one, I am still one, and I can do something. And it's, I hope, a very uplifting and positive concert for folks to then leave just thinking about how we engage with the planet in which we live, and thinking, what might I do on this 50th anniversary of Earth Day that perhaps is different this year than any other year. So I look forward to sharing it with as many of you as possible. All the information is at chorusaustin.org, and there you can also see information about the rest of our season.
Wonderful. And this is a concert not to be missed because it's such a good experience. And I don't say only that because my piece is there, although they are really rocking that piece. But all of the music, it's very powerful. So I hope to see you there and say hello at the end of the concert. Well, I think we are at the end of this interview, so I just want to say thank you so much, Ryan, and I hope to have you here soon.
Thank you again for having me. I can't wait to be back.
See you in the next episode of the Happy Choir podcast. Ciao, people. Woohoo! You've been listening to the Happy Choir podcast. For more information and show notes, visit thehappychoir.com.